Can you imagine going to work, doing construction, and having to hold a tool in one hand and a sword in the other? Well, today we're going to talk about the book of Nehemiah and how he had to build, protect, and give care for the people all at the same time. Good morning, I'm Pastor Rini. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. So glad you joined me today. Beautiful, beautiful kind of late fall, rainy day, snow in the mountains. It's good for all of us. And we're looking at the book of Nehemiah, which was also originally written together in one scroll with the book of Ezra. And if you think of Ezra and Nehemiah and Esther, it's all on the same period because Esther, remember, was the queen of the king of Persia. And so during this time, Ezra was trying to get the people to go back to serving the Lord by reading the Torah and the Word of God. And Nehemiah's job was to try to protect the people by rebuilding the wall that was demolished by the Babylonian destruction and captivity of the people. So here we are. The king of Persia is giving Nehemiah his cupbearer. So Nehemiah was a high official under the king of Persia. His cupbearer, he gave him permission not only to build a wall, but he gave him provisions, he gave him guards, and he gave him building materials and money, all to restore the security of Jerusalem by rebuilding the wall. Now, as in any good story, there are some bad guys in the story, and you got Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Sanballat was a Horonite, which was a Moabite, which was displaced when the Israelites took the promised land. Same thing with Tobiah, an Ammonite, and of course Gershom, an Arab. So these are three people who didn't want the Jews, the Israelites, to have a restored kingdom. So throughout this whole story, they're kind of the enemies who are stopping him from rebuilding the wall. And so I'm going to pick it up in chapter 4. And we pick it up in chapter 4, verse 6, where it says, "So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work." So they got about halfway of the wall rebuilt, and the bad guys in the story, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gershom, felt like that was a dangerous thing, and now they realized that they were going to complete the wall, so they wanted to set up a way to stop the building. And this is where there's a plot against Nehemiah and all the people. So what Nehemiah does in a brilliant stroke is he takes families and he places them in the breaches in the wall, the areas that are not quite done or the low areas of the wall. And he places those families there to kind of sound the alarm in case someone tries to come in at night and cause damage. And he tells them in verse 14, he says, "And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, 'Do not be afraid of them,'" which is these enemies who despise them. "Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, for your sons, for your daughters, for your wives, and for your homes." And so he comes up with his plan to get half the people to carry the tools and work, and half the people to just carry weapons all day and watch for the breach in the walls, the swords and the spears and the bows and arrows. But even that, he has everybody who's working carry a tool in the left hand and a weapon in the right, or to have it strapped to their side. He says in verse 21, "So he labored at the work, and half of them held the spears from the break of day until the stars came out. I also said to the people at the time, 'Let every man and his servant pass the night within Jerusalem, that they may be a guard for us by night and may labor by day.'" So even though they're working and prepared, they had to take shifts at night to make sure no one came in to cause destruction of the wall. Verse 23, "So neither I nor my brothers nor my servants nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us took off our clothes, even kept his weapon at his right hand." Sounds like a hygiene issue to me. Obviously, they're trying to protect the wall. That was kind of what they're saying. So he gets this scenario set up. First of all, they're already halfway done. Secondly, they set these families in the places that would be dangerous. Third, he has everybody carry a weapon and do some work. Fourth, he has them all standing guard at night with shifts, and they have trumpets to blow in case they have trouble. And of course, this is discouraging to the enemies of the Israelites because Nehemiah has a plan of protecting the wall while he's building the wall. And the wall to them represents security of the people, security of the temple, security of the growth of the Israelites as they get back to purification and following the one true God, even though Nehemiah was the cupbearer of a pagan king who did not serve the one true God. But he did marry a woman named Esther who was an Israelite, and she served the one true God. Now, while this is happening, though, there's also tremendous oppression against God's people and against each other. It says in chapter 5, now there arose a great outcry of the people and of their wives against their Jewish brothers. So they're taking advantage of one another. So there were those who said, with our sons and our daughters we are many. Let us get grain that we may eat and keep alive. So what's happening is the taxes are so great, the people are struggling to make ends meet. Their own brothers are lending them money at ridiculously high rates. And because they're giving them money at high rates, they were having to sell their fields, or they were going to have to sell themselves. They were going into massive debt. They were starving. And so Nehemiah says, this is wrong. How dare you take advantage of your brothers and sisters? And he makes those who were taking advantage of them give back their houses and their vineyards and their equipment and give and reduce the ridiculous amounts of interest they were charging, the high interest, which is called usury, and to give them fair value for their money and allow them to begin to grow their grain and press their olives and get back to work and get their houses back. So it's interesting that even in the midst of this restructuring, that Nehemiah cares enough to explain to the people that what you're doing to each other is not good. You have Jewish brother against Jewish brother, stealing from them, taking from them, hurting them. Let's treat each other fairly. And because of that, he leads by example. And this is important because people watch what you do more than they listen to what you say, right? No one cares what you know until they know that you care. And Nehemiah says in this chapter 5 of verse 14, moreover, from that time I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of Xerxes the king, Artaxerxes the king. 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allowance of the governor. So he refused to take from the people what was offered to him as a governor. The former governors who were before me laid heavy burdens on the people and took from them for their daily ration 40 shekels of silver. Each their servants lorded it over the people, but I did not do so because of the fear of God. So they extracted high taxes from the people to get rich. Nehemiah refused to take that money from already depressed and oppressed people. He says in verse 16, I also persevered in the work of this wall, and we acquired no land, which he's allowed to do, and all my servants were gathered there for the work. Moreover, there were at my table 150 men, Jews and officials, beside those who came to us from the nations that are around us. So as a leader, as a governor, you have a workforce, and you're supposed to care for them. But look what he does with the workforce. 18. Now what was prepared at my expense for each day was 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and birds, and every 10 days all kinds of wine in abundance. Yet for all this I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because the service was too heavy on this people. Nehemiah fed 150 people a day, and he did it at his own expense. He refused to tax his people for his opening his home to take care of his workforce. And then it says in verse 19, remember for my good, O my God, for all that I have done for this people. Now notice how he feels the opportunity and the comfort of reminding God, who already knows, of his generosity. I always often say to people that are struggling financially, are you tithing? Are you giving to the Lord? Are you supporting his work? And many times the answer is yes, and other times the answer is no. And the answer to why people don't tithe and give offerings is, I don't have the money. And my response is, how little is your faith in God? Because if you gave to God's work, God has promised he would restore back to you 10, 30, 100-fold what you gave. In other words, God is your provider. He doesn't steal from his children. If you give to his work, he responds by giving back. And notice that Nehemiah, in a time of great oppression, when people are starving, believes that as he supports his own people, pays out of his own pocket to feed them, does not tax his people, that God somehow will bless him, will provide for him. And he actually prays it. And when you give your tithes and offerings to the Lord, there's a courage that you get with the Lord to say, Lord, I give faithfully. I'm struggling. This is happening. I don't know how to pay for it. I need provision. And God will give you that provision. It's a promise. And so as Nehemiah is showing us, we must build the kingdom of heaven. We must fight the enemy, which is not flesh and blood for us. It is darkness, spiritual darkness of Satan and his demons. And we must care for God's people. And we do so by giving to God's mission and God's work. It's a beautiful example of a faithful man who did not take for himself, but cared for others. Nehemiah is a great story, and we'll continue the story tomorrow. So today, enjoy this beautiful day. Give to God what is God's. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And then petition God for your needs, because he is a God that loves to answer the needs of his children. Well, if you like today's video, what do? Hit that little like button right there. Share this with a friend. And then we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:47. Love you all. See you then.